Curse of Strahd, Chapter 12, Part 12, The Wizard of Wines. Now, the Wizard of Wines winery exists in Barovia, but it was featured originally in the Rahasia module, featured in first edition, which predates Ravenloft, or its sequel, or Curse of Strahd for that matter. The Wizard of Wines first appeared on a series of wine labels involved with a puzzle from Rahasia. But in this case, the Hickmans returned to help write Curse of Strahd and expanded with some world building to build the actual Wizard of Wines location here in Barovia. World building adds a lot to a campaign. In this case, the Wizard of Wines is run by the Martikov family, a family of were-ravens, who, it should be noted, are good aligned lycanthropy. When the player characters arrive in this area, they will find the were-raven family having suffered some losses as of late. Notice the cards here, the raven and the merchant and all that. That does matter. The player characters will get this description of the approach and the location. They will get some information on the Martikov family itself, including its primary members, and some history involving the Wizards of Wines itself. Now, they do produce effectively, or have produced, three types of wine. They are currently producing only Purple Grape Mash number 3. Don't ask me what happened to number 1 and 2. Here we have number 3. This is an unremarkable wine, and it's brewable thanks to a magic gem that is buried in the ground in the area. There were once 3 magic gems buried here. The second gem was the more tantalizing Red Dragon Crush wine, but the gem for that was stolen by Baba Yasaga, who's over at Berez. She's been sending scarecrows out to the Wizard of Wine since then, with the intent of stealing the other buried gem. Now, the third gem, which was responsible for the Champagne de l'Estampe, was stolen or misplaced 10 years earlier and is considered lost. Some DMs have placed that gem some elsewhere, essentially in Curse of Strahd, and you could bring it in if you'd like. That perhaps it is in the possession of someone in Kresk, for example, who might be using it to help create flesh golems. That would be the abbot. Or perhaps it was consumed by a bird, who then turned into a rock. These are popular ideas of what might have become of it. Or it could be in Castle Ravenloft, buried somewhere, although it is not in the actual castle in this adventure. I like to think that the Vistani made off with it, and it's somewhere in a different domain of dread, maybe Mordent, or maybe it was purchased and ended up on the Isle of Gostria, in that land's Dark Lord's possession, who covets wondrous things. Now, here at the actual Wizard of Wine, however, in its current state, again, they're only making Purple Grape Ash number 3, but everything is stopped in general, not just because of Baba Yasaga, but because the Druids of Yester Hill are also attacking the Wizard of Wines with both several druids, and these are hostile druids, but also with twig blights and needle blights. And if the player characters aren't careful, a blight tree will return later to attack. This is the primary threat for the Wizard of Wines in general. As we go into the adventure, I'll show you the map of the winery. We have the ground floor here, which of course has these wine vats, wine kegs, and other such things. Here's a wagon, which they can load up full of wine, storage rooms, and all that. It has a basement, which is unusually cold because beyond this secret door in this little cave passage, There's a lot of brown mold, which cools the basement and helps keep the wine extremely cool. There's also the upstairs. This area right here is open to the downstairs, and there's other chambers, including the bed chambers of the family that lives here and works here. There's the hoist for lowering and raising things into the wagon. It's a well thought out map. This is a Mike's Glee map if you didn't realize it. Oh, look, here's the outhouse, another location that I'm glad they added into this map because it does make sense. I also like how they included the chimney here for, the kitchens and all that. Little touches like that, including this well out here, make the adventure and location feel real and sort of lived in. Now, as I noted, you get the approach to the area. It's drizzling lightly when the player characters arrive. When the players arrive, there are needle blights and twig blights that are essentially androids out in the actual grapevine, in the vineyard or vineyard, however you pronounce it, and they're lingering out there. As a DM, you could have them attack the player characters as they approach the actual winery. This is actually how I ran it, but it will lead to a large battle outside the winery, sort of on the road, and you'll have to build a map for that. I actually would prefer, if I ever ran Curse of Strahd again, to have the player characters make it to the winery and be able to get inside. The adventure actually suggests this as well, which allows the player characters to have to deal with the twig blights and everything like that, and use the winery as sort of a base of operations to barricade the doors and whatnot. It's more of a horror approach rather than a large open field battle, but both do work. I'll note that if you do want to use the method I use for my campaign and have 30 needle blights and 3 druids attack in 3 different waves that begin 120 feet away, it will be a very large battle. And it will probably be very bloody and very dangerous. Again, this is just a different way you could run this. Either way, in the long run works, but I wouldn't do that approach unless your player characters were a little bit higher level. If your player characters arrive early and they're second or third level, I would do the approach where they are in the winery when the twig lights start showing up, and they have the opportunity to using the building as a defensive position. Just depends on how you want to run it, however. Now, as we go through the winery, for the most part, you get different rooms, you get the descriptions of the rooms, they're well described, you get just basic information as usual, and for the most part, you player characters have to deal with the twig blights that are outside the winery, but there are some inside the winery as well. Notably, in location 24, there are about 24 twig blights lingering around the vats, and there are in number 14, or I should say in room 9, not room 24. Room 9, there's 24 twig blights and a druid. In room 14, there's a druid over there, and there's some other threats in room 20. Now, if you want to run it this way, you can have the player characters arrive, check out the actual place, interact with the Mardukevs, who I believe are hiding in the woods when they arrive, deal with the initial threat, and then have the other Twig Blights show up, which again will be a big threat. Again, it just depends on how you want to run this adventure. There may be some items found, treasures found in different places here. In this case, with my campaign, the Sun Sword was found because of the Fortune of Ravenloft in the Barrel of Sand, which is just how that campaign went. The Taroka deck will greatly change how their campaign happens. My player characters got very lucky that they found it so early in that Barrel of Sand. If it had been in Castle Ravenloft or in the Amber Temple, it would be a very different campaign. Put it that way. They also had a priest of light and of the Morning Lord who ended up with it, and so they had a lot of benefits there. Your group may not have that; it just depends on the group. Now, again, we get other descriptions of each room. All this is very logical and it makes sense. There's some traps here. There's not a lot of traps, but there is this situation with the wine rack and the druid down here casting Thunderwave and breaking many of the bottles potentially, and the brown mold, which the player characters might not find. It depends if they discover the secret door or not, which it's not really a threat for the player characters. It's more like the Mardukov family is using brown mold to keep everything cool, which is fairly intelligent. And finally, you get the rest of the house. You get Davian Mardukov, who is the patriarch of the house himself, who apparently wears silver items, which is amusing. You do have some of the locations of where the wine is going to go in Barovia, although I'll note, as I noted earlier, the wine has also been seen in the temple location in Rahasia, which doesn't have an official domain in the domains of dread. You could put it kind of anywhere, but it's assumed that at one point in time, the wine flowed out of Barovia, but because the borders are closed, it can't flow out of Barovia right now unless the Vistani end up with it. And the Vistani are one of the groups that end up with wine. So if you're doing a campaign that takes place in Mordent or maybe Borca or something like that, the wine might still be there, but only it might be in short supply, this particular type of wine, as a result of Barovia's borders being closed. Now there's some treasure and all that and other loose things. Interesting enough, there is the printing press where the actual labels are printed. This is really important. This one little room, by the way, just because of the labels in Rahasia, which apparently were printed in W20 here at the Wizard of Wine in Curse of Strahd. It's a nice tie-in to the Hickman's first published adventure, which, by the way, got them hired with TSR, I believe, at the time, and led to Ravenloft, and again, its sequel, The House on Griffin Hill, which is also worth taking a look at, by the way. It's that does take place in Mordent, though. That's the haunted ghost land, which is southwest of Barovia. But nonetheless, this one little location is incredibly important, and this location in general adds again a lot of world building to your campaign, or to the Curse of Strahd campaign. Now, there are two special events. One is wine delivery. Essentially, the player characters can deliver wine to, well, Valaki, to the tavern and inn there, or they can also bring wine to the Blood of the Vine tavern in Barovia Village, also to Kresk, and might encounter trouble on the road. They might even have an escort of one of the Mardukov family members with them while they're traveling. And then there is the second event, Winter Splinter Attacks. Winter Splinter, as you can see here by his image, is well, he's a blight tree, or whatever you call it, a tree blight, I should say. And if the player characters don't come back to the Wizard of Wine and don't deal with the druids at Yester Hill within a few days, Strahd arrives at Yester Hill, hearing about different events taking place, and causes this event to take place. Essentially, causes the druids there to finish a ritual, which summons the tree blight Winter Splinter, which then afterwards attacks the Wizard of Wines by itself and drives off the Mardukov family, who then flee to Valaki and take rooms at the inn, where the player characters might end up finding them, hearing that, well, essentially, this takes place 3 days later if the player characters don't deal with Yester Hill, which is one of the next chapters. This would happen. And this is actually one of the more interesting parts of this particular part of the campaign, that something else will likely take place. These secondary events can still happen, but it all depends on the player character's actions. If your player characters, like my group, were at the at the Wizard of Wines and then decide to check out Yester Hill to deal with the druids, this likely won't happen. But if your group decides they want to go back to Valaki, or they want to go check out, the town of Berez, or they want to go towards Kresk, or God help them if they want to go to Castle Ravenloft, this event likely will happen, and there will be consequences. And this is one of the best aspects, I'd say, of all of Curse of Strahd, that there are consequences to the player character's actions. Now, it is interesting to me as a DM that in Curse of Strahd, that this is a location where the main threat is not undead. Like the Death House, where the main threat actually is a shambling mound, a evil plant creature. The threat is a series of evil plant creatures in this particular locale. It's a change of pace, but it works for the campaign. You could also, do your own thing. You could have evil some sort of evil animals in some part of the campaign as well, other than just a rock, which would also work if you're expanding on this adventure or if you're doing a campaign that takes place beyond Curse of Strahd in one of the neighboring lands. But Curse of Strahd often gets labeled as an undead campaign, but I like that this particular location kind of switches that up a little bit, and you're fighting something that isn't just undead. It also creates a lot of world building, both for Curse of Strahd, but also connects back to the Rahasia module wherever it might take place. Could be just in a regular world, who knows? And that adds a lot to the campaign in general and various other things. As a result, I would rate this particular adventure or this part of Curse of Strahd as a 5 out of 5. It is definitely worth running. It can be terrifying in its own way, and a lot of things can happen as a result of this location and the player characters coming here. Now, guys, if you like my reviews, you want to see more of them, please like and subscribe. And if you wish, check out my Patreon. The link is in the description in my bio, and stay tuned for more content.